This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, everyone, good evening, counselors and citizens of Port Orford. My name is Ann Velisis. I'm the mayor, and I am going to open this January 16th, 2025 meeting, regular city council meeting at 5:32. We're going to start the meeting with a roll call and a pledge of allegiance. So we will begin with the roll call. Councilor Brennan.
Here.
Councilor Burns.
Present.
Councilor Poggs-Wisd.
I'm here.
Is Councilor Rask here? Not yet. Councilor Webb.
Web present.
Thank you. Okay, do I have to say anything after the, that is reflected, right? Yep. Okay, so now let's follow with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nice to see you.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. We'll be starting our meeting, and the first thing on the agenda we have is any additions to the agenda. I don't think I have anybody. Do we have anyone that has them? Okay. Well, tonight we're starting our meeting with two presentations. I am going to be giving a state of the state address, and then we will be turning over, state of the city, yes, and then we will be turning it over to our Finance Director, Ann Heath. So let me begin. It's a tradition of many governments for the top elected official to share with citizens a check-in about the current state of affairs, kind of like an annual doctor's annual visit. I think this is a good practice, and so I wanted to share with you my own take as your new mayor. In short, our town has been through the ringer, but I hope we're now on track to get onto a better path moving forward. Truth be told, our city government has faced many challenges in recent years with an almost complete turnover of long-standing staff happening around the same time as COVID. Meanwhile, to save money, previous councils assigned too many tasks, including finances, recording, and planning, to the administrator. In retrospect, and hindsight's 2020, this was penny wise and pound foolish, and led to poor management, more turnover, and many unanticipated problems and extra costs. We fell behind on audits, union contract negotiations, and proactive maintenance of our infrastructure. Your volunteer city council, which relies on staff to provide solid information to make good decisions, did not have the information it needed. The good news is that City Council hired a new professional administrator in early 2024 and gave her marching orders to make things work. It was a tall order given the hole we were in, but over the past 9 months, Administrator Radcliffe, together with our city staff, have been working hard to clear up a heap of accumulated problems. We're now almost caught up on our audits. We completed negotiations with the 2 unions that now represent our employees. We have a new consulting attorney, a new part-time finance director to help us put our financial house into good order. And I hope residents have noticed a new level of professionalism and responsiveness at City Hall. However, we still have big challenges ahead. Fundamentally, we're a small city with a small staff and only 700 or so households to fund needed government services. Public works and public safety are the big items. The revenue that pays for our local government comes primarily from use fees and property taxes, which are capped. But the costs of everything, including hiring competent staff and maintaining facilities, has been going up and up and up. This is not a new problem for us, but the consequences of not addressing it are now coming home to roost. Some of you will remember residents were given an option back around 2010 to vote for bonds that together with enormous federal grants, would have helped to fund improvements in our water system. The proposal was defeated by just a few votes. And since then, our water distribution system has continued to deteriorate with more leaks and breaks and enormous water losses, even as our dedicated public works staff has worked round the clock at times to keep drinking water flowing to our homes. Some neighborhoods have experienced repeated boil water notices, and this just isn't right. Meanwhile, owing to poor management, our reservoir has not been dredged for more than a decade, creating the water shortage problems in summer that led council to the policy of curtailment, which means we can't safely hook up new homes to our water system. The lack of dredging means we have trouble in winter too, with sediments resuspended, making the water too turbid to treat at our water treatment plant, sometimes for days at a time, until the sediment settles out in the water in the reservoir and clears the water in the reservoir. So with these significant constraints, I feel that fixing our water infrastructure must be the city's highest priority moving forward. In 2024, we finally secured the necessary dredging permit, and we have been working ever since to secure funding to proceed with that critical task. In addition, our city's applied for a number of other grants to address water needs, including the $6.6 million federal infrastructure grant that could help us fix our leakiest, most break-prone lines. This project would help not only the neighborhoods with the leaky lines, but all of us, because we all pay all the time for all the lost water. We'll find out about this grant within the next 6 months. As a city councilor, I've put considerable volunteer elbow grease into trying to tackle our water system problems because I feel they're so crucially important to our public health and safety. This is no longer a matter of paying for new development or not. It's now a matter of making sure we can supply current residents with drinking water and fire safety. And I'm hopeful that we can make positive headway on these much needed water system improvements in 2025. Meanwhile, while resources for law enforcement at the county level took a major hit in 2024, the Port Orford Police Department has kept our local community safe, keeping watch and responding to dozens of calls each week. In 2024, we saw completion of the Highway 101 paving and lane realignment project by ODOT through the center of our town. And though there have been some hiccups with some of the new curbs and getting adjusted to the new configuration of traffic, I've generally heard a positive response from the community. And there's certainly been a traffic slowing effect with far fewer traffic violations. This has made our main street safer and hopefully more conducive to visitors stopping at local shops and restaurants, which benefits our local economy. It's also had unforeseen budgetary consequences for the city, which is something that we will need to look at more closely in this coming year's budget process. On a more positive note, last year, our city received a $2.5 million federal grant to renovate our community building, and we expect that this project will happen in 2025. This facility, which had once been a hub for community dinners, theater, music, dances, and more, has fallen into serious disrepair. I'm aware that some people have asked why this project got to the head of the line ahead of the critical water infrastructure projects. In short, it's a different pot of money, and also in that very special Port Orford way, a dedicated group of local citizens, the Community Center Friends, in conjunction with the Community Service Fund of the Port Orford Rotary Club, raised money to kickstart this project. And because all federal grants need match money, this community financial support was the critical ingredient to get that ball rolling. So far, the Community Center Friends have raised over $400,000 that will ultimately help with upgrades to the American Legion Hall too. So I think clean water definitely needs to be priority number one, but we need also to nourish our community spirit. And so I'm hoping that with teamwork and community partnerships, we can make progress on both fronts at once. On the matter of housing, last year we started to implement our short-term rental ordinance that limits these types of operations in our residential zones with the aim of keeping long-term rentals available and affordable for people who live and work in our city. Our city also received a grant last year to rework our zoning ordinance to allow for smaller houses and accessory dwelling units, or mother-in-law cottages, a project that our city planning staff and planning commission have been working on. The City Council will be taking this up in 2025. I'm pleased to report that our other volunteer-based city commissions, including parks, emergency preparedness, and historic preservation, are also working on worthy projects and efforts. As we all know, Port Orford is a remarkable place to live, owing not only to our beautiful setting at the edge of the Pacific Ocean, but also to our big-hearted, community-oriented citizens, volunteers who help in so many ways, from cooking and bringing meals to elderly neighbors to fighting fires, from protecting our watershed to helping kids learn to read, from upgrading our city park to planning for the future, and so much more. I'm grateful for all our dedicated community and city volunteers, and I'm optimistic that with our new council, our excellent staff, and a renewed focus and common purpose, we can tackle problems that we now face. And I know that working together, we can continue to make Port Orford a better place.
Amen.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Okay, so now, yes, Joseph.
Just real quick, Councilor Rask has arrived virtually. She arrived at approximately 5:35.
Thank you. Welcome, Councilor Rask.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we move to the next checkup item on our agenda, which is the financial checkup by our financial advisor, Ann Heath. Welcome, Ann. Please come on up. That's great.
I'm Ann Heath. I am actually a contractor hired through Umpqua Financial, business out of Rochester. And so I have a background in city management and financial management. So I'm happy to be here and enjoying my time working with.
We can't hear you.
Okay, I will try to talk. I'm hoarse, so I will.
You might need to, we might have to have you.
Okay, if I need to point. Okay. All right. So I have a PowerPoint and I'll do my best to try to show you without pointing, but I might have to get up and point. So.
We need a laser.
We got to get you a laser.
Right, I need
Laser
a little
pointer, I
laser
guess.
thing.
We have one in the Amazon cart right now, so
Okay.
it'll be here.
Good. That'll be great. Go ahead. Okay. So what I've tried to do is design some reports that would help you understand where the city is every month. So I'm hoping these reports work for you. So at this time, if the city was budgeting over 12 months evenly, you would be at 41.67% at November 30th. And so revenue wise, you're at 43.63%. So you're slightly above where you should be. Don't get too excited because all your tax receipts come in November. And so most of your tax receipts come in November. So you can look up at the general fund and see that it's quite a ways ahead. The park fund is very ahead because it received some grant funds that were not budgeted. So the council will need to fix that before the end of the year. We're going to have to do a budget change to accept those revenues so they can be spent out. Public safety also received their tax receipts in, and street fund is below. So you can just go down there and see where every fund is. These are your operating funds only. This is not every fund of the city. Let me see. So no interfund transfers have been made yet this year, in this budget year, and we will be discussing that.
But so to be clear, our water and sewer at this point is less than what we would want it to have for revenue. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's not reserved, or is it?
But keep in mind that there are some interfund transfers that were budgeted
Oh, I thought these were-
in those funds. Whether or not we make them or not will be a deeper discussion. So we can go forward to expenses. It's same thing. They should be at 41.66%. I know from talking to your staff that they are not spending one dime more than they have to. They're being very careful with funds. And so most funds are below. Your public safety fund is slightly above where it needs to be in expenses. So what I always like to do is look at where our revenues versus our expenses, and hopefully there's a gap. That's the perfect world. And so right now you do have that gap, that you're taking in more than you're spending. So that is good news. So we can move ahead. This is your cash, how much cash you have in the city. And you have cash, you have $2.7 million. But pay attention to where those funds are, because you have almost $1 million or over $1 million in SDC funds. You cannot spend those. Those are reserved by state law. They're specific use funds. You can't.
You know what that.
You cannot spend those on any other fund. Those are for capital expenses. And so the whole point in those SDC funds is they build so that when you do have a large capital project, such as your water project, you have some funds to put forward toward that project. The other funds are in reserve accounts. And so, and Parks has a substantial amount of money right now. So it's really important to see where your funds are, if they're reserve funds. Just because you have $2.7 million in the bank does not mean you have $2.7 million to spend. And so keep that in mind when you're seeing this report. The street fund right now is struggling for cash. Maybe, they do get money every month, and that will probably be recovered in December. But your street fund does not have a lot of money, and we'll talk further about that. You can go forward. So I know this is small, and this is what I like to use to look at if everything goes right with the budget, and this is for the general fund only, where are we going to be at the end of this fiscal year? So at June 30th, where is the general fund going to be? Well, the general fund started out the year in the hole, 59,000
yeah.
in the hole. And so it recovered this in November because it received tax receipts. But if you look at that bottom line come June 30th, we're pretty much back where we started. The general fund is still in the hole. Now, there's transfers out that were budgeted in this budget year of $225,000 out of the general fund. Well, that's like writing a check to a bank account when you don't have any money in your checking account. The general fund does not have the funds to make those transfers. That's the reality. If it does, it's going to be, there's no chance of it recovering. If you look over at 2023, and I know these numbers are small, but if you look on the line that says transfer, $679,000. I shared this last month. Literally in that year, the general fund was gutted. And it was, so for the water project, which is an important project, $306,000, and to the public safety operations, $350,000. And it really hasn't recovered from that year. It's just too much money transferred out to make it a viable fund. And what has happened is that it can't keep its head above the water with these transfers that are constantly going out of it. It can be looked to fix any problem in the city so long as there's money to share. But it manages the operations, the administrative operations of the city, and there has to be enough for that. You have to have your administrative staff you have to run City Hall. I mean, that's the cog of everything happening at the city. So at the very least, the general fund needs to break even, if not have enough money, a little money at the end of the year. The problem with having $58,000 at the end of the year is you don't get your tax receipts until November. So when the cost to run your general fund is somewhere around $40,000 a month, and you have 5 months after June 30th to get by, you're not behind $58,000. You're going to be much further in that hole. And so making those big transfers to other funds is not going to be possible for you this year. And so we're going to have to work through, what do we do instead? So we can go forward. I think that's. So for the park fund is holding its own. It's strong. It received some great grant funds, and you have projects in there, and it is holding its own. So I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on that.
I would just add, and to make clear that those grant funds are the funds probably for the community building, which
Okay.
falls under the parks budget, just
Thank
to be
you.
clear.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the TLTs go in there too. Yeah. Okay.
So we can go forward, Joseph. So your public safety fund is a little bit elephant in the room, and I want to say up front, I understand completely. I've ran a police department on the general fund. I understand how hard it is. We did not have a public safety levy, and it's a community value, and especially now, and when Curry County is having such trouble, I respect, and I know you have committed officers, but this fund is not operating on the funds available to it. So this general fund is having to step in every year and bump up. So I believe you are funded through tax dollars for 2.5 officers. So with the general funds transfer in this year, it would end on a positive note. The problem with it is the general fund doesn't have the funds to transfer. Even if you wanted to do that, the funds aren't there.
It worked last year, but we've gotten down too low. Yeah.
It's too low. And so there is a problem in this fund. This fund at this point, the cash carryover from July to November is about $200,000 as well. So you need that much money left in your account at June 30th to get you to November. And it's just simply not there. And so it's not functioning on the operational funds available to it. If the general fund can get healthier, then it could help out more. But if you want to maintain your police department as it is right now, then you're going to have to seek other revenues for your police department, or have a higher tax levy or something, because right now this fund is broken and this fund is breaking the general fund. I don't know how much clearer to make that.
It used to contribute to other funds, the road fund.
Yeah.
Fund, which was like my great
Right.
accomplishment, I thought. So you're talking about this amount of time, the Jasons, right?
Uh-huh.
So if that first Jason was met, then it's not a problem.
Well, the goal is to slowly recover and get that much money. See, when you run out of money in the general fund, you're having to borrow from another fund. Whether you vote that in as a council and say we are going to borrow money from sewer reserve or wherever, and it's a formal loan to the general fund, or you have an undocumented loan on your books that auditors don't really like too much. They're going to make you document it. And so
So I guess my question is if that first Jason was handled
Uh-huh.
somehow, let's just, a bag
Right.
of money, done. Would we face the same problem again?
Well, hang on, because I'm going to answer your
Okay,
question.
All right, I'm looking
Okay.
forward to hearing that answer.
Yeah, yeah. So we can go forward, Joseph.
Actually, can I ask you one question on that
Uh-huh.
first too? In that yellow box, there's a sentence there that says total personnel services exceeded the top tax option receipts 65,622. Did you mean that the tax option receipt is 65,000, or that's the amount we're exceeding?
No, so you are spending more on personnel in the public safety than you take in tax receipts.
Right, and that number 65,000 is the
The
amount?
difference is
the difference. Okay,
65,000.
thank you.
Yeah.
Which is a quarter of 25% of the revenue loss that has occurred in the traffic courts, right?
Yeah, and so that was another thing that I was going to mention is that you had much higher citations before, and those have dropped off, and that is part of the issue. The street fund, it is also, if it were to, would be receiving money in transfers from the general fund, but we can't do that. So it would be ending up in the red as well if that transfer is not made. So some changes have to be made in the street fund, or we need to find more revenues for the streets. And that can be done, and I can talk about that with staff or council or whatever. I was very successful in raising some revenues for the streets at my last position, and it took some time. It took some planning, it took some public education, but it did happen, and we started seeing the difference of potholes being fixed and streets and sidewalks being fixed. So, we
Sorry.
got off.
Street. All right.
Yeah, we can go forward. Water fund, both the utility funds, we can go through them. They're holding their own right now. And there are some transfers out. So water cap, one of the issues I saw in the budget that there's $100,000 transfer from capital reserve to water. Capital reserve doesn't have $100,000. So we need to look at that. Sewer enterprise is holding its own. It's doing well, and it will end the year well.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I could have sworn we did that transfer out of the sewer fund to fund water last year. That's positive.
Yeah,
That's what I remember is we
Yeah.
We
we
can look
loaned.
at that.
Did we not loan? I think that's where that $100,000 came from. I think. I don't remember it coming out of the reserves. I remember
Okay.
it coming from wastewater fund, knowing that it was a loan and it would have to be paid back. That's the way I remember
Okay.
it.
It
But-
wasn't recorded in the budget as that, so we can look at that.
Okay, that's what.
Yeah. Okay, so we can move forward.
When was that, John? When was that, when did we do that transfer?
That was last budget cycle.
It was during the budget cycle?
Yeah, yeah. because
Was-
Or
we came up so short everywhere. Remember when we talked about employee staffing issues and all that?
I think it was like a supplemental budget because you really needed to drain the pond or the
Supplemental, that's, I
This
can't,
pond.
yeah.
It might have been.
Hmm.
It might have been.
So this is a 5-year lookout, and I showed you this a little bit last month, but I went ahead and took your information and put it in. And this is what I recommend for budgeting really is 1-year budget and 5-year projected, because it helps you to see 5 years out how you're going to be doing. And right now, if you look at the transfer line, I left it at what's supposed to be transferred this year, and what if you grow that over 5 years at 4%, which is how we would increase all materials and services in the projected years, your general fund continues to be in the hole. It just can't recover while it's trying to support all these other funds. So it begins in the negative, it ends in the negative. So there has to be another way of managing this in order to get your general fund healthy. We can move forward. So this is the general fund. If we take out those transfers and we start letting the general fund start recovering, and you can see by the end of 2026, you have some money in the bank, enough to carry the general fund through to November. And then in 2027, it starts being a healthy fund again, and it is capable of helping. I have some transfers in there. It can send $150,000, and maybe the next year it could send even more, but you have to let it recover so that it can be that fund that can solve the problems of the city if it has to. So this is just looking out and saying, if we didn't make all these great big transfers, in just a couple years, the general fund could recover. And so, and this is just projections. It's just a different way of looking at it. But I wanted to share that because it's not something that can't be fixed. And I've seen it fixed. I've fixed it in a city I worked for. So yeah, when I took over, the general fund I inherited was $870,000 in the hole. And we did recover it. And there's ways you can do that. And I think we'll be having some discussions regarding that. So here, I just wanted to list some of my concerns. The general fund can't continue to transfer funds for operating purposes and other funds unless it gets to a point where it can do that. The cost of the police department exceeds tax levy receipts, and the general fund is not in the position to help it. It's just not. Street fund expenses exceed state transportation dollars that it receives. So the general fund, it depends on that general fund transfer. And we know that we can't do that. So the other thing that I am concerned about is that the utility funds and parks and streets are not paying their fair share of administrating the city. And so I do have an example of what that would look like at budget time to try to figure out how every fund pays its share fairly of the administration of the city. And that's a good way to keep your general fund healthy, but fairly being reimbursed. There, you do reimburse you spread your personnel expenses over all the funds, but that's not always the best way to do it because it's a number out of the sky.
That's where all the street funds goes, isn't it?
And so it's just really confusing. And so there's a better way to do it, to figure out, and I'll show you that. So my suggestion is to stop the interfund transfers from general fund for general operating expense to other funds. You can transfer for special projects or help a fund, but it has to be it has to be a healthy fund before you can do that. The funds that you have need to be able to operate within the dollars available to them. Both public safety and street funds need substantial cuts to spending immediately, as the general fund will not have the funds to transfer to them. And I can't tell that you're taking this information. I'm telling you what I see. And so adopt a fair allocation method that repays the general fund back from all funds share of the administration of the city. Consider a transportation fee or a gas tax for covering the costs of maintaining and repairing your streets. Now, our community did not want to do that. They didn't want to pay a gas tax. But when we were able to show them how much money was being purchased from outside the city, that was your tourists coming through and buying gas. It was substantial. It really was substantial, and it really did change some people's mind. And then the transportation fee was we added that to utility fee, and it did really make a difference in fixing some. But those are just some ideas that I have worked with, and they were both were successful. Economic development funds and tourism and transient room tax funds, whatever you get, your administration in the general fund is answering the phones, they're updating the website, they're helping tourists. You know, there is a part of that they are doing, and that there needs to be also a reimbursement for their time in that, because that is you know, I did talk to them and say, how much are you answering phone calls for tourists? Are you updating the website here at City Hall? And they are. And so again, making sure your general fund is reimbursed fairly for the work of the administration of the city. And I can answer questions if you have them.
Any counselors have any questions at this time? Yes, Counselor Webb?
Well, I see that so I've had, the street fund's been something that's, if everybody remembers, before the county did these streets, they were terrible. You had to have four-wheel drive just to get across town. And the county.
Excuse me, Counselor Webb, can you please speak into your mic?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, so the county owned the roads and did the roads. And they gave us a couple $1 million and repaved the roads. And that was 25 years ago, something like that. And this is coming up. This is coming back. This is going to hit us really, really hard because there are roads now. They never were before. And so when we're having 6,000 or 9,000 come in per month from the state of these, we're not putting that much out in the streets. I used to every month read what came in and what we spent on the streets. And it was something like $16. Mm-hmm. And so it's almost like the language that we're using sounds like that we're putting money in the streets, like we're spending all this money on the streets, but we're not really spending a nickel on the streets, but it's going elsewhere. And
well, and I think the
some
reality
of those other funds that look so, well, this is really healthy, maybe, you know, and then I wonder if perhaps public safety could benefit from some of those shared. If public safety does, if the police department, I'm trying to think of how an example of kind of tired. Let's say there was a burn permit, or somebody's doing a unpermitted burn or something, or they're, you know, are we getting, is the public safety getting that money into their, you know, if they're, and I don't think that they are, that's not a question, it's kind of rhetorical. I would say that there's all these things that the police department does that I don't know that we are considering when we look at that big, like, oh my gosh, $64,000. Well, what if it was 7 of it was from over here? What if we grab 7 here and 14 there? And then all of a sudden it looks more reasonable. And so I just wondered, they're patrolling the parks, right?
Yeah.
So example, parks looks really good, right? But we count on safe parks, mm-hmm. and we wouldn't send our children to an unsafe park. So there is responsibility handed to the public safety. So is there another way of thinking that might benefit us? Just another way of thinking, yeah. Maybe, or maybe it's more a bookkeeping thinking type of exercise that we could. Mm-hmm. Is there an art here that we can kind of?
There's absolutely an art. And so Parks is paying partial expenses of the police department right now.
They are. Mm-hmm.
They are. Part of the issue with the public safety that I see is that you don't see the true cost of the public safety. Their salaries are spread a little bit. The chief's salary is spread, and then another officer in the parks, and your dispatch costs are in the general fund, which is odd because a police department, that is totally police expense as a dispatch cost, unless they're dispatching for public works.
They do both.
They do both.
They do
okay.
Both. We do get call outs for water leaks and any other type of road emergency.
So that's something to think about, is water paying part of the dispatch?
Well, we can't afford to.
Yeah. So those are the kind of things that we need to look at and really look at, you know, who is this bill for? And should this particular fund be paying all of it. So there's lots of things that you can look at. Absolutely.
And are like the costs of some of these things, like the burn permit, does it really pay? And
Well, I think
Yeah.
that's the type of thing that costs us money,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And if,
of course, yeah.
not that that's gonna get 65 grand out of the deal, but.
Yeah.
But I
Right,
also would,
right away permits are the same way though.
yeah,
We have
yeah, no, it's
cost.
all, and we should be
It needs to
getting.
be a cost. It takes staff time.
They usually, when you do these strategic business plans, and one of the first things they say is you've got to recover the cost from the person, the individual, that party that is going to do that. They want to do it, they pay for it. That's just the way it works.
Right.
And I think we're probably pretty far behind on that.
I just have one more slide to show you, and this is small, and I apologize. So this is an example in an allocation method. Because I mentioned it, this happens at budget time. And basically what it does is it takes all the expenses in every fund and it says, okay, and that's the total business of the city. This is what it costs to run the city. And you add in personal services and capital outlay and debt. So you come up to a total in every fund of the expenses it takes to run that fund. And then you come up with an available for allocation, which means you only charge 10% of debt and 10% of capital outlay, because administration of the city is helping pay the bills for capital. They're paying the debt services. They're working with your funders. So there is some costs in there that are administrative costs. And so then you come up with a total available for allocation, which is the brown box. And what is the percentage in each fund? So what is their percentage of that total allocation? And you come up with a dollar amount that each fund needs to be refunding or repaying back to the administration. And this isn't happening. It's happening somewhat in personal services. And that doesn't mean that the council has to say, yep, that's what the number is, and that's what we're going to charge, the water fund and the sewer fund. You can say, okay, I get that is their share, but they can't really afford that much. So this year we're going to charge them 50% of that. It's up to budget, what's going to work in the budget. But then you start seeing everybody's paying their fair share of the administration of the city. And that also helps your general fund, because you're reimbursing it for the expenses it absorbs. This is one way of doing it. And I've seen it be very successful.
That's helpful, Ann. Thank you. Okay, I think I really appreciate your coming and helping us to understand this better. I feel like with these diagrams and with your scenarios, it really, I think, helps us to understand, certainly helps me to understand better than I have in the past. So appreciate that, Ann. And we will be later in this meeting talking about kickstarting our financial committee again. And we'll need to get going on this early this year because we have some big questions to discuss.
That
Yes.
question, if we made the first Jason, did you answer it? Did you sneak it in?
I did. Maybe I showed you how if you didn't make the transfers in 2 years,
Oh, yeah.
your general fund is
So we're
recovering.
talking about $120,000, right?
For
Ballpark.
40,000,
40
200,000.
twice, 88, but throw some sugar on top. So does that sound like that much money? It doesn't really sound like that much money to me.
We'll say it again. How
No,
much is it?
It's 40,000 for 5 months.
Right.
So
for
that's
for
200.
5 months.
So
Yeah.
200,000 a
Think of it
year.
as Jason. That's what I always tell
So
people,
we're at 5.
Jason, yeah.
So we need to come up with basically another $200,000 a year.
Yeah, yeah. At June 30th, your goal should be that the general fund still has $200,000 as a carryover to the next year.
But we're not overspending that. We just don't have it.
You don't have it.
Right. So that's the difference is, right? Is that we're not overspending it. We just don't have it.
Well,
Well, we have been overspending it because we've been borrowing Peter to pay
Sure,
Paul,
but
and it's been okay, but we've been working down the reserves,
right.
and so now we're up against the edge.
And I'm not saying that it's
Yeah.
good or anything like that, but that's, we're bringing in, what did you say, 2% more than, or what was that number? Than we need to spend. It was, the total budget was,
Yeah, so if you look at your
so really
revenue
is that
expense.
stretch of the Jason months, right? That looks so bad that we have to address,
Mhm.
and some one-ofs could fix that. Not, in other words, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a fee increase that came every single month to every single household. It could be something more creative, like selling off excess property that the city might have. Just saying, would that be?
There's all
I just can't
kinds of things
imagine
you
how
can
we
do.
would get another $200,000 out of our people. We don't have it. Nobody's got it.
It's not getting $200,000 more out of your people. It's
Spending less, but
spending, it's
but-
retaining what you need for the administration of the city in the administration.
we
And
have decided that we want someone to answer the call at one in the morning when my mom has a man in her garage.
Mhm.
And we want, that has always been, that's what government's for. Number one, to protect your people. Number one, the rest of it, water, right?
But we haven't, like when we went out for that levy last time, I was under the impression that it would cover our costs. But what we're learning now is we didn't really understand that we were not paying our costs. So
It was previous to the road diet.
yes, exactly. Right.
So we're in a bit of a transition.
Yes, we have to
period,
figure it
and
out.
that should speak to a couple successes. That one, we made a very good decision when we went with the road diet.
Yeah.
And two, our police department was very effective, right? So cutting costs doesn't seem like the answer to me. I mean, I just,
But we also lost a bunch of revenue in the tickets.
well, that's what I was saying. I mean, that's not to say, and of course, public safety is not about revenue, right?
Right.
Just that we
Pay for
start off by saying that, but
We also lost a lot of money over the past couple of years in mismanagement.
yeah.
We've
no,
had to pay lawyers, we've had to
We were
pay
bleeding, yeah.
overtime, we've had to pay a lot of money for things that were not right, or that would
in
have
the
been better.
past, it didn't happen.
That did not happen.
Right. So I just can't help but think.
I guess I want to say to you is it is not cutting costs. It is simply you don't have the money. You simply
but I'm
don't
saying
have the
if we
money
did have
at
the
this
money-
time. If you did have the money,
Then we would have money.
then you'd have the
But
money.
Brett, we came up with the last budget, we came up with a whole list of ideas and we haven't ever got, the finance committee never really got around to going back to work on them. So I think that's the next step is Anne has some great ideas for creative financing because we have to figure out how to re-chunk things up to understand it. I think you're on that path.
Yes.
And then we have to start finding ways to see if we can raise some revenue. Part of it might be like moving TLT monies a little bit differently or,
Just, we could, it's just silly, like the Jubilee, could hire the police department for the parade day for $10,000. And, I mean, there's all kinds of things that you could creatively do, but going right out by cut, I just don't want, when that old woman calls the cops got to come.
Absolutely.
Period. Man, otherwise, what are we doing?
Yep.
So anyway.
And I want to make it clear to you that I'm paid to give you the bottom line.
Then I appreciate
And
it.
I understand this is a value of your community. It's an emotional, it's a passionate value of your community, and I get it. But my job's to give you the bottom line.
Yep, thank you.
And I cannot change that.
Oh.
So
We have a lot of work to do, so we appreciate it. Thank you so much, Anne.
you're welcome.
Okay. There is a path forward. And
Absolutely.
to make us feel better, I sent an article, I think, to you a couple weeks ago. I saw that the city of Salem was $37 million in the hole. That certainly made me feel better. I thought, okay, well, we're
It's all zeros on the end.
we're not the only ones, right? No, that struggle.
But I think it is the creative idea of being thoughtful about what we're spending. It's being thoughtful about what we're still providing. So it's a combination of things. I don't think, like you're saying, just whacking one whole department and saying that's where the problem is. That is not it. We need to be thoughtful about revenue and about spending and understanding that we have tough decisions. You folks have tough decisions to make, and we want to do it in the most thoughtful, least painful way possible and the most equitable too, so that but it can be tough.
That finance committee is.
Well, I think you're going to make it
Are you gonna
today.
name one?
Yep.
The mayor's going to?
Yep.
And then we're gonna ratify it, or you're gonna get right on that, right?
I want to get right on it.
All right,
Yeah.
man,
There we
thank
go, there we
you.
go.
We got to get on it. And of course, anything that can, we'll talk about it later. Let's keep moving. Okay, yeah, the next thing on the agenda is the consent calendar. So we have 3 items on the calendar tonight, so I'd entertain a motion to approve these items as presented, or if there are any modifications. So moved, okay.
I was curious on page 7 in the minutes, right in the center. I don't know what that vote, is that a misprint?
Gotta move to second and then.
I don't know what we voted on.
I think we have to have somebody second it.
Okay, I'm sorry, we didn't get a second there to keep moving on this agenda.
No, right here.
Excuse me, okay, we got a second from Perry. Okay, discussion, keep going.
All of us voted yes, right in the middle, right underneath the emergency prepared
What page, what number is that?
7.
It's right here. This
Okay.
Yes, I took a look. That is in fact just a typo error.
Okay.
They didn't vote on it.
Okay,
Page 7. In the white section, in the little white tab, Brett.
I just kept trying to see what we've actually voted on, and
good catch, Counselor
Page
Burns.
7 there.
It's actually number 7, I think, isn't it? Or no?
8.
Or no. Oh, it is 7, okay.
we had voted to extend the meeting above the emergency, and then
Yeah, got it. Okay, so would you like to just amend that? I think you can amend the motion without pulling the entire motion. I think we can do that. So any other discussion?
And is Greg Thielens, is he reapplying? Is that why?
Yes, I think his term is up, and so that's why we have to.
Oh, I did have one thing. I'm sorry. I didn't interrupt you there.
Yes, Counselor Webb?
Liaison reports. I either misspoke or there was a misunderstanding. Was the crab delivery started on the 4th, which is not accurate. That would have been something like a test, a domoic acid test was due on the 4th or something like that.
State that, please.
The minutes reflect, let's see, Webb, there's a lot going on at the port. Crab delivery started on the 4th. And so it would have been a domoic acid test would have been on the 4th because the season didn't open until a couple weeks later.
Okay.
So there's some confusion there. I'm not sure exactly. If I misspoke, my apologies. And I guess that the minutes would be accurate then if that's what I said, but I would have been inaccurate.
So approximately what day did they start?
The 13th is when the gear went out, and then the 16th is when harvest occurred.
Okay, so the change that you're proposing is to say that the domoic acid test occurred on the 4th?
Yeah, but there's
Or
several
just
of
to
them.
strike it? We can make it simpler and just say, if you want to just strike that.
I think that would be just cleaner. Just
Why don't we just strike crab delivery started on the 4th and leave it
Yeah.
as is? Okay. Any other comments on this? We have 2 amendments so far. Any of the counselors on screen? Any change, anything? No. Okay,
I'll move to accept the consent calendar.
Wait a minute.
we already have a motion and a second.
Oh,
So you've made the amendments, so I guess
I would rescind.
we can either rescind or we can just say with those 2 amendments. So I will call for the vote for the the motion presented with the amendments discussed, which is to remove those extra from page 7 and to strike the wording that Counselor
That would make.
Webb
that my
striked.
motion then,
Okay? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Counselor Brennan.
Yes.
Counselor Webb.
yeah. Webb, yes.
Counselor Burns.
Yes.
Online, Counselor Pogwizd.
Tim, yes.
Counselor Rask.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we are on to citizen concerns. Do we have any concerned citizens in the audience that would like to speak? This is the time when you can speak to items on the agenda. Okay, we have nobody in the audience. Do we have anybody online that would like to speak to an agenda item? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. We have no public hearings this month, so we will move on to the departmental reports, starting with the administrator's report.
Okay. I turned in my department report in writing, so if anyone has questions on those, the only addition I have is that, and it's for counselors and the mayor to get on a calendar, February 21st in the afternoon, approximately 3:15 to 5 p.m., Friday, February 21st. The League of Oregon Cities, the new president, Jessica Engelke, she's the mayor of North Bend, and the executive director, Patty Mulvihill of the League of Oregon Cities, they are doing tours of the South Coast. So they'll start in the morning in Brookings and then come through, I almost said Gold Hill. My Rogue Valley is showing Gold Beach, thank you. And they would like to stop here and speak to some of our counselors and the mayor to see what we're doing, talk about some of our infrastructure issues, because it's something across the whole state, and also to see positive things that we have going on. So I would like to invite citizens and our counselors.
So if counselors want to do that, shall we have people RSVP so we can keep track of if there's a quorum or not, or is that an issue?
Yeah, if yes, RSVP to me individually, not as a big group. And then if you can do that, and then if there's a quorum, we could put out that it's a kind of a training tour sort of an situation. Yeah, we'd have to explain that it is. So, but anyway, I think it'll be a nice thing for us to do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on your first paragraph about directing planning to be looking at the water?
Yeah, one of the things to call out, thank you for that. We did have Brian Gillooly from the Department of State Lands come and train with us to talk about wetlands and wetland usage. And one of the things that he talked about was, and we've discussed this before, our building packets are out of date as far as what we do when someone is going to build or change their property in ways. And so he felt it was a good idea to update our building packets and look at our codes. So it would be a recommendation by staff to perhaps have the Planning Commission look at some of those ideas and then bring those forward of what they find. So that was a consideration.
I think after that meeting, it was a great idea. It was a helpful meeting, and we definitely identified gaps in between kind of what state law and our own code and stuff. So I think that would be a great thing to do. So should we make a motion for this now, or do you think we should wait until it's time after? When will the Planning Commission be done with the other process? Probably like in May or June,
yeah, I think
right?
this is to get it just in your minds about it, because I do know that the Planning Commission is already working on a grant to improve codes and things, but this would be something after that. So it's not on fire. While we had met with him, I wanted to put that in your mind. So whenever makes the most sense to have that happen, that would be a recommendation.
Is there a grant for code enforcement?
is there a grant for code enforcement? We've actually been working with our Port Orford PD that if there's, because we are still in Port Orford complaint driven on a lot of these things, that I would write a letter to let the landowners know that there was an issue and do that a couple times. And then if there's still not compliance with that, then it would be turned over to the chief to have him have officers go and
Like,
talk.
I guess my question can articulate that very well. So there's grants to church these up, right?
There's grants.
Grants to church them, clean them up, make them better. Your ordinances,
To improve the codes and to improve.
correct, I'm sorry, yeah.
Planning grants, I think,
Like a
yeah,
planning-
Okay, so
technical
that's what you're
planning
calling it,
grants,
right?
yeah.
So is there an enforcement end of that? Is there an enforcement grant? Because a planning grant would seem foolish if you couldn't afford to enforce it. So perhaps we could plug into that, and that might also be another drop in the bucket that might go into the,
I think
Well, I have-
I think the point that you're making is a good one in the sense that we have had it on our back burner, and this gets to another thing later on when we talk about priorities, to deal with figuring out how we deal with enforcement. And this training and this came about because of some problems and complaints and the need to enforce and the difficulty to enforce.
and forever.
And that's the underlying
Trying to
thing. And so that would be, might be a first step or something that we have to figure out first.
It's just always been, there's no teeth. There's just
Yeah.
never been any teeth. And it's just like, well, then what are we doing? You know?
Yeah, and then you have neighbors that have to deal with all sorts of problems because, so it's something to try to figure out. That's the point.
And that's so the steps that we're taking is when we get or my staff to get those, then we are pushing those letters out. And then if it does not happen, then Chief has said, yes, his officers will step forward in that. And so there could be, what you're saying is there could be revenue generated by that.
It needs to be documented as such, you know what I mean? So that we can really get, we need to like a laser focus on what's happening with those officers and their time
Mhm.
to fairly allocate those resources that are so finite.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and those, if the residents are out of compliance and we have to use law enforcement to fix it, then it should come out of them. They're
The problem is, I think,
not
is
cities.
we have this it's the money. Usually it's because people don't have any money. They're,
Right.
Right. And gentrification isn't something that interests most of us. I mean, I
Right.
don't know. But I guess we have to be smart enough to know where to chase those dollars. And does that sound rude? Perhaps, but it's the truth, I think.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to just suggest that we continue on here, registering those points. I forgot to mention when we approved the consent calendar, I did want to thank Planning Commissioner Chair Greg Thielen, who's here tonight, for your service as our Planning Commission Chair, and appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Very much. Thank you, Greg.
So anything else under department reports? We've got John, you're here, and you've just given us this Public Works report. Do you want to just give us the highlights since we didn't get a chance to read it ahead of time?
Yeah, December was a brutal month. Cost us a lot of overtime, all kinds of problems with the water plant and turbidity and I don't know, too many trees to even count. We still got them out there. We're still cleaning up and trying to handle everything else at the same time. But just a shout out to my crew. They did wonderful. They kept the plant going. I was gone for a couple weeks during that whole mess and very few phone calls. And so it went as good as could be expected. I was impressed. And
Wow.
I think they did everything they could. There's still some holes out there and a lot of stuff to fill and clean up, and we're working on it as we go. And as we get time, we're trying to do other things. I also updated, I think the only thing I really want to talk about is the service line inventory. I've gotten quite a few emails and phone calls from folks letting me know what type their service lines was. It was a huge help. There's still going to be around 300 probably to go through. So we'll be pushing pretty hard to try to get that done by July. Otherwise, we've got to re-notify everybody. So I'm hopeful, but I'm not going to say 100% we'll make that deadline. But the least amount of notification is beneficial for City Hall and myself. So that's going to be our focus pretty hardcore when the weather gets a little bit nicer. We can just go out and try to spend some time on them and not getting torn away for other things. We're working through this stuff at wastewater. There's all kinds of stuff going there. We've had, as you know, meetings with the energy efficiency group and DEQ and several other entities. So I think looks like there's some light at the end of the tunnel and maybe some funding coming from those groups. And we're going to continue to pursue anybody that will give us money to try to get some of this stuff done at a cost that we can afford. Let's see what else. There was one other thing, I think. No, that's pretty much it. I gave you an update to the schedule or project list. We got a lot of things checked off, as you can see. There's one big one on there and 2.5, 3 small ones, but we're moving forward on it. The Coast Guard Hill lift station is going to take me a little more time than I anticipated. I got to get Civil West involved to make sure we meet the right pipe diameters and pressure and flow rates that's requested in the master plan. So I'm going to involve them for some guidance and maybe make sure they check all 3 vendors. We've got 1 quote back and it's been updated. We need to get 2 more quotes. It looks like it'll come under our projected budgeted line item. And hopefully we get the installation in there too. And we can discuss that at a later date when it comes to that funding revenue that we have a shortage on. And maybe that's something that we want to try to maintain 1 more year or something. So we can have that discussion in the future here before I spend the money on it. Arizona lift station is probably the biggest news. It's in manufacturing. We should see it here fairly soon. We don't quite have funds in the budgeted line item for the replacement of that station. Cost went up significantly in the 1.5 years it took to get it permitted, but I don't think it's going to be that huge of a cost, and I think there's enough money in the R&M on wastewater in either R&M or on the collection sides, pump stations. But I think we'll be able to cover the installation cost, and we're going to try that, get that also done before the end of the fiscal year. Got to find a contractor and get an RFP out, but we didn't want to spend the money on the RFP until we get the lift station on site, and then Civil West will develop an RFP. And we'll get it out and hopefully we can get 2 or 3 contractors so we can get best bang for buck. I think that one's probably going to be a time and materials job because it's only a couple days worth of work and it should go pretty quickly unless we run into some unknown complication. So other than that, you can see we made $4.5 million. We sold 1.7 at the very top of the page there. So significant loss and significant cost.
Yep.
But our average in the summer is about 2.5 million as far as sold. And I think the drop off is probably the increase, that we did, the 9% or 8%, whatever it was. So maybe people are using less and being a little more diligent about it, but we're still not keeping it in the pipes and tank. But that's just, I try to share that every time so we can kind of see it. There's a lot of use at water plant that's not metered, so it's really hard to get that percentage down to what it really actually is. It could be around 35 is my guess, 30, 35, 30, somewhere right in there. But
Through leakage.
well, through with what's being used at the water plant that's
Oh,
unmetered. So it's hard to estimate that stuff because it's running all the time with the mixing of the chems and stuff. So there is a portion of that 42% is usage at the water plant. I just don't know how big a portion. So that was one of the upgrades. I talked with the energy guys about trying to get some type of meters, figuring out where everything taps off so that we could capture that cost.
Great.
Or usage. And that would help us get it'd be nice to have a true loss rate, right?
Yeah.
But we bounce between 40 and we were 51%, I think, last month. So that's significant, I guess.
And saving our water loss saves energy, saves electricity. There's so many costs that go into that loss of water. So
yeah, saves a lot of chemicals. Chemicals are expensive. They went up quite a bit. In fact, I think we're a little short on what was projected this budget cycle for. Well, we know it is a little short, but you got to have them. So, and they've increased a little bit, and that's going to continue 3 to 4% probably. But
Should
that's
the raw water tank help?
the raw water tank will help not on the cost of water plant, but it'll definitely give us a buffer of being able to run when the water's so bad.
Some of that, would that be able to be used in the sewer plant?
What
The
be used?
raw water?
The raw water? No, I don't think so, because
We're using finished water in there.
we're not using anything right now because that electrical line and box needs to be replaced. That failed here about 2 months ago, so we don't have any sprayers on right now, which is okay because we don't have the heat and the foam. But in about 3 months from now, we're going to have them. So we're looking at a project that's unknown, wasn't budgeted, but it's going to be probably a couple grand for the new wire and box. We got the box. We just need to research some wire and find the time to be able to get a new electrical line ran out to that UV pit. And then that pump will be back on, we'll be off complete. We won't have to use treated water, which is our goal, obviously. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, John, thank you so much. I always feel like we could ask you 8 million questions because it's like your job is like a Rubik's Cube and, or I don't know what your job is like. There's many metaphors it could be, but
Yes.
Anyway.
And they change daily.
It changes daily, but I really, please thank your staff because I know that they did work around the clock over the holidays to keep everybody's water flowing. And that was a lot of work, a lot of stress. So really appreciate your staff. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Chief Hobart, since you're here, do you have anything to report?
I assume everybody got my report. Did anybody get a printed copy?
No, we got it. Thank you very much. And is there anything on planning to report? No? Okay, moving on to the mayor's report. I will just say briefly that we did, to add on to John's report, we were plugging along in some of these grants. We had a grant meeting yesterday to talk about this raw water tank project and get that kicked off, which is good. And I've been checking in on a few of the other grants we have in the hopper, and we just have to be patient and wait on some of them, but they're there. And I do want to report today too that many of you probably have heard the bad news for our community that Coast Community Health Clinic has closed, or is going to be closing in about a month from now. So that's, I feel like, incredibly, it's a big blow for our community. It's going to be, I think, very difficult, an emergency situation for many of us who have healthcare needs in our community now. So I just wanted to mention that I have been invited to a meeting about this, and should there be any opportunity for our city to write letters or in support of a solution or advocate, I would trust that you guys would let me represent us in that. And I will feel like it's a very important thing for our community. So I want to make sure that as a city, we can support anything that's needed to make that, to try to figure it out.
And that wasn't just our community, it's Bandon and us. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we just found that out today.
Just found that out today. And I understand there's going to be public meetings, there's going to be more announcements and all that. But since we're here today, I just wanted to mention that and say that I feel like we've talked about this before, the need to be connected to that facility. And unfortunately, it's now, we need to be connected to the solution in some way.
There's got to be somebody that's going to step up, right? I mean, you can't just close those doors and
Yeah, and I think there's
get new
this,
organization that's going to come out of the fire and
yeah, I hope it's going to be something where it might get a little worse before it gets better, but we're going to have to, there are obligations they have, and we'll have to figure out how to meet them. Okay, moving on to, there's liaison reports. We don't have any written reports, and with everyone's permission, I was thinking maybe, unless there's something really important that anyone wants to report, that maybe we should just move on from them tonight. And because we haven't assigned the liaisons yet, we can maybe pick it up next time. Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then that takes us to old business, which is the first item, which is we have the Historic Preservation Commission has a proposal. So Mr. Cook, would you come forward and give us your update here.
All right. Oh, I'm Rick Cook, and I'm chairman of the Port Orford Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm one of your town eccentrics.
Thank you for saying that, so I didn't have to. No.
I was here a couple of months ago, and we want to get a CLG grant from SHPO to do a survey at the Hamlet, reconnaissance level survey, and I've explained to everybody here what that type of survey is all about. And I can answer questions if anybody has more questions on that. So where we're at is we have a bid from a contractor of $9,000 to do the survey. We asked for 3 bids, and we got 2 bids, and one outfit didn't want to bid because they were in Vancouver, Washington, and didn't want to come all the way down and do the job. The other one was in Portland, and their bid was over $22,000. And George Kramer from Ashland was $9,000. So obviously we would take the $9,000. Plus, I think we're going to like him.
He's got a
lot.
good proposal.
Have you ever done him? Do you know him?
The proposal looked really good.
Yeah. So right now we have a grant application partially filled out. Actually, it's pretty much a rough draft, isn't it, Jerry? I think we got to make a couple of changes on it. There were a couple of errors in there or change of a date. And then it'll be ready to submit, and we submit it online. Once you guys have approved that we can do it, then it's already online, and all he's got to do is push the button, and it's sent into SHPO. We also want to run it by Curry Gill, who is our SHPO contact to make sure we're right. And actually, I think they'll pass that grant almost as soon as we send it in, is the way my understanding goes. The deadline's the 28th of next month, but once the grant goes in, they can approve it, and we want to start the project March 1st. And then I think George only needs 3 or 4 months to complete the project, and he wants half down and half when he's done, which makes things, I think that makes it pretty simple.
And you said the grant, they were willing to do that.
Yeah, they'll front us the money. They'll forward his down payment, and then we pass it on to him. And then he'll invoice us when he's done. And then we don't hold the whole grant money. They'll do it as he invoices. They send it to the city, and the city pays him.
Right.
The way it works.
So one of the things that we've discussed, if you recall last time, and I'm just going to bring this up for purposes not of this, but in general, is that because we have so many grants going right now already, bigger ones, and we know that we've got commissions that are going to be coming probably forward with more proposals, and we are becoming aware on the backside of how much work this is for Dina, because every time there's a check, she's got to kind of work it out and sort it out, and that we have to just be eyes wide open or have situational awareness about what this does for our staff to have grants. And so we've kind of talked about in the future working toward a almost like a little questionnaire that gets people to think it through and ask ahead of time, like, what kind of grant is this? How many checks are there going to be? Like you've said, there's just going to be 2. And what is the obligations of the city? What are, all that kind of stuff, just so that, and also that, that asking a commission to pick one priority for this year, as opposed to, just because, so that we can make sure our staff isn't getting underwater on lots of little things when we have bigger priorities or things we need to work on. So in that, those are some discussions we've had around this, and it seems to me that you've already had good conversations with Mr. Cook and and the Marmons. And
Mhm.
it sounds like this project will be of minimal disruption or can be done relatively easily and be a great project for us.
Right, because they already came before and asked if they could do this, and so that was, kind of tentatively approved from before. So we did have our meeting and discuss, and it's been, the grant writer did it, and so wanting to push that in.
And according to Curry Gill, we should be able, our group should be able to do the evaluation at the end too.
Okay,
Great.
The same, with her guidance, she helped Jerry fill out the application and the same way. So hopefully that'll just take as much of the burden off of you as we can, and anything I can do to help, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And as far as helping the contractor, he'll be interested in historic information. I already have a file, and then he does, he'll go through county records, and he'll probably go through some newspaper records. I've actually already done it, but I find these guys do a better job than me, so. And I'll send him what I have, and then he'll, so the city, you guys don't have to do anything. We'll do it.
Well, so I'd entertain a motion to approve the city moving forward with this application.
Support of the application. So moved.
And choosing George Kramer. Do we need?
Well, why don't we make the motion and discuss it? Yeah.
Second.
So a motion that we approve George Kramer doing the work for the.
So chronologically speaking, I think we would want to approve the
Approve the grant.
Approve the grant application first, and then, let's just do that.
And then so.
Which is, Brett made the motion to move forward with the grant. So if we can have a second for that.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Thank you for your help. Any further discussion?
I just noticed on when I was reviewing my packet on the letter that you submitted here, it says Willamette CRA submitted a bid for over 2,000. That needs to be changed to the 22. Because when I looked at their thing, it was just shy of like 22,000. And here it just shows up as $2,000.
Oh,
It's just a typo on the,
Oh, I see, yeah.
On their part.
no, it's on our,
Well,
our
they're
agenda.
out anyway.
Oh,
That's good. That's kind of thing gets us in trouble later down the road.
yeah, 22,000. But one of the things that this brings up, and we were talking about it, and this is for all commissions moving forward, is because we are a city, we have to follow a very specific procurement process. And so we have to make sure that, we try to get 3 bids. It sounds like you did try to get 3 bids, but then we have to document it and such. And it may be, seem less important for a little thing like this, but it's just the practice that we have to follow as a governmental body. So, I trust you will work together with Melissa to make sure that documentation is in, that we did that. And just in terms of a process for picking Mr. Kramer, does that then have to come back to us, or can you, since it's under $10,000, can you just make that decision?
We can make that decision as
Okay.
long as you say that, yes, it's okay, and that we have a good, we've gone through the procurement process, which we have been in communication about that we did. And then, I think you could say now even that you approve picking that bid, although it is operations, but I think it could go either way in this case, since it is close to 10,000, but it is obviously the best
Yeah.
situation. So
And I think he may prove to be the best contractor for us because he works over here. He's done a lot for Coos Bay, North Bend, and he vacations over here in the whole bit. So he knows our territory, and that'll help.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, let's call for the vote on moving forward with the grant. Okay, I will start online first this time. Counselor Pogwizd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Rask,
Yes.
Counselor Webb,
Webb, yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Burns.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, I think we've got a good plan, and it sounds like it's clear that who we're going to pick, but it's under the 10,000, so we can just let Melissa do it. I'm fine
The guy
with
knows
that.
what he's doing. That's how you get the
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
9999.
And-
Rick, so in your, wildest fantasies, the product that you're gonna get, what's it look like?
I should have brought a copy of the app. He's gonna fill out a SHPO form on each piece of property.
Okay.
It's gonna have the current name, historic name, if there is one.
Okay, so there's
owners,
one on,
And the date it was built, and then
Gotcha.
he'll evaluate whether, it could be put on the National Register or
Gotcha.
not. He'll do that. He'll also define whether it's Craftsman or Victorian or.
there's something online now about that starts on the south end of town and it works up the highway and back. down.
Yeah, it's very similar to what
Yeah,
I
okay.
did as
All right.
as an inventory.
Okay, it's exactly right. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. Thank
yeah.
you, Rick.
And I think it would be great. I noticed that you mentioned there might be more stuff about Mayor Gable or whatever. And if there is anything written, it would be great if a written report could get to the library and
Sure.
also to the city. I think it would be great.
Well, he will give us a package when he's all done. He will give us, and he's taking photos. He'll take.
Great.
The city owns that.
Place.
The city owns that document. Who owns that document?
Well, I believe that document is Rick, on behalf of the Historic Preservation Committee, is creating a database that should be someday living on our website, right? That's our historic
Trying to write
inventory
that
of
in
the
what
city.
that's gonna be.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. Okay, well, let us keep moving on.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
very
Historic
much.
Preservation
All right.
Commission. We
Good work.
appreciate your dedication and knowledge.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to now move on to new business here. And we are going to be starting with the council rules project. And so we had a work session last week. And one of the things that we discussed a bunch of ways that we might update it. And Joseph has gone through and created a red line document with some of the recommended changes and additions. And one of the key things that we talked about is that the need to kind of try to make our meetings shorter. And that is what everybody wanted. So we came up with a few ideas for how to do that, including having the liaison reports be written, having the counselors be prepared by reading packets ahead of time and asking questions of staff ahead of time, and just everyone needing to have a sense of time as we're moving through, and also maybe having more work sessions so that we can discuss things that need discussion at a different meeting. So those are just some highlights. With that, maybe what I will try to do, one of the things we discussed was to go around quickly and see if anybody has any general comments they would like to make on this. So Councillor Brennan, would you begin? Do you have anything?
No.
Councillor Burns?
No, I think I'm good with the changes.
Councillor Pogwizd?
None at this time.
Councillor Rask?
No.
Councillor Webb?
I just think that other members of other governments visit our meetings and stuff. They admire our work. They admire our relationships that we have with one another and what we do for the city. Are we here late? Sometimes we burn the midnight oil, but I don't think that's the worst thing you could do. And I know we get tired and people even get testy and stuff. And I know that our production goes down, but if we can serve, hearing Gary speak, I hear him, I listen to him, and then I understand him. And it's any one of us. Tell me why you're going to vote no, and those things you can't do ahead of time because of our public meeting laws that really kind of bind us to this communication.
I hear you
Yeah, that
absolutely,
makes
Brett. And I think that's the balance that we have to strike. I totally have learned so much and value so much from the conversations that we've had that take a long time, that take time. But I've also heard from a lot of council members on this body that after a certain time, they get tired, their thinking is not good. Oh, another thing we're proposing is to move the business up front instead of at the end of the meeting. And so if we want to make good decisions, that's the balance that we're trying to find.
Right. No, I think that we are, especially given the issues that we faced over the past couple of years. We're doing a good job, and no one hates each other, and that's a big deal.
Right.
8 people that sit down that don't hate each other, that's a big deal, especially talking about the things that we have to talk about. So I think we're highly successful, and that we should just be careful with what we try to trim, because we may be trimming the good parts.
Yep.
And that's it. I just respect everyone's opinion. That I want to hear what it is. Maybe it'll change my mind. So, okay, just want to be cautious of that we don't get to. Our council rules speak of the parliamentary fine points of parliamentary procedure and stuff, and we've been able to avoid that. You know.
But we've also, and this is where it's tricky, because you don't want to be so formal that you're like, Mr. Webb, you have 3 minutes to speak kind of thing. And yet we have to make sure we give everyone, some people are kind of more extroverted and talk a lot, and some people are quiet and don't talk a lot. And we have to give every person their opportunity. And we want to make sure that we can move through things. Because we could also sit here and talk a really long time, which would be actually really fun if you're interested in the topics, which I am.
Yeah.
So,
our rules speak to, raising public suspicion due to adhering to the fine points of parliamentary procedure.
We don't
doing
do that.
pretty well, and I wonder if we just had a hard shutdown time, and you had to come back next Tuesday, if maybe that would push us through, and we could self-police ourselves,
Well, I think the idea is to try to police ourselves as we go, because what continues to happen is we show up, this has happened again and again, we show up at 7 or 7:30 and we haven't even gotten to the business part of the meeting. And so I'm going to try to move us along. And so I hope it's going to take us all to do that. And I think if it turns out that there's a time, like, for example, when you feel or anybody feels like, boy, we need to talk about this more, then we either decide, okay, let's do it now, or we say, this is going to be a longer conversation, like some of the budget stuff, or we're going to need to move this to a work session. So that's I think what the spirit of the conversation was at that work session that we had, that unfortunately you were not able to attend.
I was
Fishing, I know.
Yeah,
Right?
it was great.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest, I didn't miss that meeting a bit. I was stoked. But the topic was good. And I'm glad that the council as a whole didn't see any big making changes, is, like, identify a problem and then make a change, and not make a bunch of changes with the theory that there's going to be a problem. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned in that meeting is many governmental bodies every year just look at their rules and just say, are these working, or what are the things we can do? And like we recently adjusted to have the hybrid meetings in and all that kind of stuff. So I think the changes that are recommended here are good ones. And if there are no additional comments, or is there any other discussion points that anyone has on this? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the new council rules, or the adjusted council rules.
I'll move to accept the adopted council rules.
Then we have a discussion. Then I will second that too. I just
Okay. Any further discussion?
have a motion. Okay, just
second.
Now we're free to discuss it, right?
Yep.
Okay, it's funny how that happens.
Well, one of the things we discussed in the meeting was the idea of perhaps having everybody go around first and just give a sense of things before getting straight into the make a motion second and discuss it.
I think that
That's-
gauges interest though. Like if you don't got two people then, sometimes an item will come across the agenda, you get to item 1C and you don't hear people. That means nobody cares, let it go. You know what I mean? Then you don't do all that stuff. There's wisdom in the whole.
Robert's rules.
Second, Robert's rules, which they say that we have a roughly follow that, but.
Yeah.
But, it
it
gauge the community's interest in that by having a first and a second,
Okay. So we have a first and a second, so I will call for the vote. Counselor Webb,
Webb, yes.
Counselor Brennan,
Yes.
Counselor Burns,
Yes.
Counselor Pog-Wisd,
Tim, yes.
Counselor Rask.
Yes.
Okay.
I got leg cramp.
The next item,
I'm so tough.
Pickle juice.
I know we don't have any here.
next item on the agenda is the election of the council president. And since I was the former city council president, which I was honored to serve in that role, we now have to pick a new city council president. And the official role of the president is to lead the meeting when the mayor is unable to or unwilling to be the presiding officer.
I would like to nominate Tim Pogwiz as council president.
I'll second that.
I would move that Tim Pogwiz be appointed council president.
Okay, we've got a first and a second from Councilor Webb. Any further discussion on that? Councilor Pog-Wisd, would you be willing to, if you are nominated, would you be willing to serve in that role?
Humble, thank you. Yes.
Okay. Now that we have the necessary information, no further discussion, let's call for the vote. Councilor Webb?
Webb, yes.
Online, Councilor Rask?
Yes.
Councilor Pog-Wisd?
Yes.
Councilor, do we need him to vote?
It'd be a no.
I
if he
don't-
doesn't.
Okay.
Did he vote yes?
Did you vote, Tim?
Voted yes, but do I abstain from that vote or?
No, I think you have to do it just because we're shorthanded here, so
Okay, very good.
Because you.
we have enough? Okay.
There's only
Five.
five of you, so these three could do it.
Okay. Councilor Brennan, thank you, Melissa.
Yes.
Councilor Burns.
Yes.
Okay. With that, thank you. We've elected Tim Pogwiz as City Council President. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the Finance Committee appointments. And so, as you heard earlier, we have some serious financial issues to tackle. And last year, one of the things that Ms. Heath did not really have the context on is we were really struggling last year to just make the budget happen because we had so much turnover and we were relying on our part-time old finance person. And anyway, we had to, as we said, move things around and do the best we could to have a balanced budget. So we really need to sort things out moving forward. Last time, Mayor Pat Cox created the Finance Committee and appointed Councilors Pog-Wisd and Burns and the department heads and staff administration to that committee. And it is I would propose that we continue that committee with those members at this time to just kick things, to get things started, to have those initial conversations with staff, and hopefully we can kind of pick up where you guys left off. And then as we get new counselors more up to speed, we could perhaps either shift positions, or if somebody else really has an interest, we could see if that would make sense. So that's my thought.
So we're looking at utilizing what we own, what the city owns, utilizing or, whatever assets we have, turning that into revenue, right? Not necessarily to sell, whatever we have. Is department heads the best? I mean, they'll tell you what we need. Here's what I need, but are they the right people to try and be creative about finding funding sources? I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just,
Well, that's a good point. And what I would suggest, what I'm thinking we do, Brett, is the last budget committee, there was a list of ideas that came out of that. And so I think some of those things that the council, the finance committee could look at are any of those ideas things we want to pursue? I think we also have to be talking to the department heads because we have to give them the opportunities to make any adjustments that they may see fit. If there are any doing things such as prioritizing. And it may be that we can't do everything we want to do this year. Like we may have to wait and do it next year. John saying, well, we're not going to be able to do that this year. We can do it next year. So it's a combination, I think, of having staff involved to figure out how to create the budget and then have.
I thought we were talking about the finance committee. No.
It's a finance committee that will hopefully come up with some ideas to bring back to council, and which is then the budget committee to.
Tim's hand is up.
Oh, yeah, to move forward. Councillor Pogwiz, thank you. You have your hand raised.
To comment on what Brett said, it was super helpful to have the supervisors, the public works and the public safety supervisors there, because not only it helps them to understand what the city's going through as well. Right. And, they start thinking of ideas and things they can do to help. They were both very good team members to that committee.
When you say both, it sounds like a lot less than what it sounded like several, I guess there's only a couple.
Well, I think it's just,
two departments.
It's two departments.
It's Melissa, Chief, and John Isidore.
Yeah, and Melissa has to be there.
Yeah, no, it's.
Thanks, Tim.
It's that, I guess the committee the finance committee that's looking at the finance committee, in my view, shouldn't be considering budgetary issues or restraints. They should be focusing on what does the city need and what does it not need, and how can that be magically turned into a funding source. It's not, because it was either we need it or we don't, right?
Yeah.
So I just wondered if that was the same thing. I guess I'm saying I don't think it's the same thing, kind of.
Well, I think the thing is the budget committee is all of us and more citizens. Right. And sometimes to get things done, since this body doesn't really like to meet like during the day or for long periods, you need a subcommittee of people to get together who's willing to put in some more time and really have some more granular level conversations. Or like what Tim was saying, is asking the department heads, well, what are your ideas? Or, really getting into some of those things. Some of those things can then be worked out ahead of time. Some of the best ideas, so the most promising ideas can rise to the top. And then we can bring them back to the council for discussion or to the budget committee for discussion. So that's kind of how I see we could work better. Because otherwise, in my experience in the past, however many 5 years, the budget committee just shows up in May and it's like there's barely any discussion. And so
because they're told this is what you have, this is what you have, this is your requirement, and so they don't have that opportunity to be creative. They're
right.
This and this, it's pretty simple.
Right. So that's what we're trying to do. I see online we have Councillor Rask.
I would like to be a member of the finance committee.
Okay. Do you think, the reason I wasn't thinking about having you, Perry, is just because I know you haven't had time. Is that something that you feel like you'd be willing to and able to serve on?
I'd sure like to try. I know it'll probably be a couple months before I can be actively involved, but I would really like to try and get in on it.
Okay.
If it's something that you think that would be better if in a few months we revisit and I can offer up my services, then that's fine.
I think that would be possibly a good way. I feel like we got to get started like right
Right.
now. In fact, yesterday or last December, or, whenever. So that's why I was thinking if we could just get it going and then, if we need to shift people, and that gives an opportunity for like Deanna to come up to speed, and we're all learning this, Ann Heath is going to help us to learn this new budgeting. So anyway, Counselor Pogwizd, I see your hand. Tim?
I'm sorry, I thought I took it down, but anyway, I don't have anything at this time.
I guess I would just
Okay.
ask Ann if we could describe the goal of the finance committee. What is the goal? Is it to say, because that's a big thing, right? What is the goal? What is the mission?
Good point. I would say, and a really good point, Brett, I would say the goal is to find promising potential solutions to address our budgetary crisis.
Which necessarily means more revenue.
Which necessarily needs more revenue.
Which.
Or some combination of revenue and cuts.
We're always going to try to do our cuts. And,
yeah. And that's what we do. We're all
thrifty. Everybody's thrifty.
We're all thrifty.
We're thrifty.
We're probably can't go anymore.
Where I feel like there's probably people in our community who are just, they look at some of the resources that we have and they think, oh my goodness, we could be doing this or we could be doing that. Chris Hawthorne's a great one. He had talked about these right-of-way agreements that we make with citizens when our streets are 90 feet wide and they want 10 feet of it. Why don't we sell it to them and why do we want to have ownership of something that's worthless that somebody else uses when we could sell it to them and get revenue forever?
And that's on the list of potential ideas for how to raise revenue.
But what happened with that?
I don't know what happened to that, but it's on the list. And I think one of the things that happened to it, and maybe Tim, you could speak to this, or Gary, my impression is that there was a decision to go for the lowest hanging fruit. And that solution actually takes a lot of staff time and a lot of other stuff to figure out, and we just didn't have the capacity to deal with it, so we didn't do that one. Is what my impression was of what happened, because I asked that question.
That I know of, we didn't meet after the budget meetings.
After last year's budget, there wasn't.
We had if I may speak.
Please do, Melissa.
I'm not being critical of anybody. I appreciate everybody's effort. I just this is a big deal, right?
It is a big deal.
I wasn't on that committee. I don't know. You were.
Yeah, so we had a list of things that we had looked up and we had discussed before, and some of those were row abatement. Some of them were a gas tax, the transportation use fees. We had a lot of those things that we looked at to try to see, as well as looking at where are places that we can prioritize and cut back on our spending and some of those things. So I think it's a combination. We went down those lists and people had big feelings and there were lots of discussions, but it really was trying to put all of our heads together to say on those issues, what are the things that we can do in the shorter term, remembering that, like for me, my first day was March 4th and we hadn't started budgeting. We hadn't done all that stuff. Right. And right now it's January. This is when we should be starting these things. And even into last month, as we started getting information together and what is our prioritized list, I think we're a little bit further ahead than where we were. And last year, right. And so last year was what can we do and quickly and immediately and to get this thing rolling. So I think we're going to have more time to be able to, in that finance committee, with the goal of finding creative solutions, of trying to find increases in revenue that are going to be palatable to our people, but also then perhaps thoughtful pruning of where can we find more efficiencies and what can we do. So those were very frank discussions that we had. And now I'm excited to have this starting back up again to say, yeah, as a finance committee, we need to know
what our target is too, because we didn't know. The budget was so screwy. We didn't know what we had.
I know, we were totally flying blind, which was a scary thing.
Sorry.
Reporter Harrison has his hand up.
Pogwizd is was raising his hand.
Oh, okay. Counselor Pogwizd.
So to answer Mr. Webb's question, we did look at those right of ways and perhaps selling off of smaller properties, but we were so overwhelmed at the time. We just received some of this knowledge. The city administrator pretty much just started, and budget session, as we know, came very fast, so we weren't able to act on that. And we felt that was going to take too much staff time at the time, but that is something that we can definitely look at. And I'm hoping some of our cost savings come from attorney fees. We paid out a lot of money in attorney fees this last year with union negotiations and other issues that we had with the city and other, staff issues. So I'm hoping some of those attorney fees will go away and cut that $200,000 down. But
We
we'll
now have to negotiate with 2 separate unions, so we have a lot of those kinds of fees. So,
But I think we're in a better place than we were
I can't.
in a more solid space.
And it's a miracle that, and thanks to Tim and for all your hard work, you too, Ann, and Gary. It's just that, I am seldom satisfied.
Yep.
And
I
this is
get
just
the
how it
drift.
is. That's me. Thanks, Tim.
The thing is about our jobs is that, it's hard to be a perfectionist with this situation. We're not going to get it just right, but we're going to get it better and keep moving it towards getting better is what I'm hoping we can do. So anyway. So, so I have proposed to appoint the same council members who were last on this committee moving forward, so we can kind of pick up where we left off and keep moving, because I think you two were involved in a lot of those conversations. I was not. That will help me get up to speed. We can start it. And then I think per Councilor Rast's suggestion, we can maybe sketch out we're going to have to sketch out an arc of time. I know Ann Heath is actually traveling. So she wants, starting in April, mid-April, she wants us to get our budget in line by mid-April. So I don't know, Councilor Rask, when you're going to have time to get on this. And if you can't do it this year, next year, you can be the chair or something. But we're going to have to really pick up the ball and start rolling. And then we can report back to you all. If other council members really want to get in, we can shift out. Or we can make it a work session and have everybody involved. Part of the reason to make it a committee is to not have to have everybody involved, or not to do the public noticing and all that kind of stuff, to make it a little bit more nimble so we can meet with staff and council members. So, okay. So can I entertain a motion to affirm my appointments?
So moved.
Those are the established members of the group.
Yeah.
You don't want to add anybody from the business community that might have fresh ideas or?
I think not at this moment, but we could certainly ask if anybody in the community has ideas. I've had people tell me their ideas. I don't think people have called me and told me ideas. I think there's a lot of ideas out there, and everybody of course thinks their idea is the best. So
I don't disagree with your appointments. Robust, I think who we put together is excellent at determining the needs.
Yeah.
And excellent at cost cutting. But looking forward, way out there, the business minded people who may not be involved with council or working for the city, those people that are making investments, I'm investing $100,000 in something that's happening over here and it'll be done in 5 years and nobody knows about it. And maybe that guy is one of the guys you want on your committee, like that. So I wonder if it's actually 2 different committees that we're talking about. Anyway, I'm going to support your decision. Yeah.
okay, I'm going to call for the vote. Councilor Brennan?
Brennan, yes.
Councilor Burns?
Yes.
Councilor Rask?
Yes.
Counselor Pogwizd,
Yes.
Counselor Webb.
Webb, yes.
Okay. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is just that to say again, we do have a council vacancy, and I was acting on the advice of the last council. I have left this council seat open, and we've put a letter into the newspaper advertising it. We're mentioning it now again. We've put it on the website. So the information is out that there is a vacancy, and I'm asking people who are interested to submit a letter of interest to me, and I will be seeing who we get and looking at people's skills and what they would have to contribute. And then I would like to, it is the mayor's role to make a recommendation to council, and then you guys will approve, will have the opportunity to approve or disapprove my recommendation. And I'd like to, we're going to be leaving that open until I get some good letters, hopefully. And but I am hoping we can move forward with that by like February. So if anybody is interested, please send the letters in, as soon as possible. Clearly, I mean, I was not setting a deadline just in the interest of leaving it open, but by the end of the month, certainly I would like to have those letters. Okay. So then the next item is, it's that time of year when we as a council want to make our list of priorities. We did this 2 years ago. It was a rough time. We came up with our priority list, and it proved to be a super helpful tool because we were able to have a list of things to work on that our administrators, and when Melissa came on, and our interim administrators worked on fixing, check, check, check. And I feel like we have made a lot of progress. So it's time to set the new priorities. And what I'd suggest that we do this time, this is what I'd like to see, and Melissa, please chime in here when I'm done, is to set a date for when we're going to get together to talk about this, but to ask the council members to send in ahead of time the things that you would like to work on as priorities in the next year or two to Melissa. And then we can kind of organize them ahead of that meeting so we can all have the materials to look at and think about and discuss together. At the same time, I think Melissa's been asking staff to come up with their priority lists. And one of the things that Ann Heath has talked about is developing our priorities and then working on our budget to serve them. So instead of just, so that there's a real integration with what we're doing so that we can support the things we actually want to get done and get them done. So it's kind of like 3 things need to come together. And so what I'd like for us to do tonight is pick the date for which we can have a council priority setting session where we can discuss the priorities and then work back from there so that we ask council members to send in priorities to Melissa. Do you want anything else to say about priorities? Because you've really been, I think in your role, you've talked about how helpful it would be for you and staff to understand priorities better.
Right. So the way I understand it, and again, I'm still new, is you folks are the ones who set policy and set vision for what we want to have happen. And then it's my role to control operations to then with staff make those things happen. And so if I don't really know your thinking or what you really see as a vision for where you want to go, then it makes it difficult for me to help guide my staff and work with my staff to fulfill those things. So I know we have lists of things that we know we need to get done, and also what our staff capacity is. And so if we can have just some guiding stars, some North Stars, understanding that there's going to be a pump that blows that we did not have on our list but needs to be fixed. There will always be those things. But if we had some goals and things we were working toward that we could also have input in by the professionals that are having their boots on the ground to figure these things out, I think we can be more streamlined and more targeted, and we can get more things checked off of our list and work more efficiently. And so though that's the piece, is that then in talking with Ann Heath, it is setting our priorities as best we can to say, what are our things that we really want to get done and things that we really want to do? And then your budget actually is built to support those things. So it's not just a wish list that's out there. It's more of, here's what we'd like to see get done. And then we're actually putting the money where our priorities are so that we can hopefully serve our community in the very best way possible. That would help me.
And one of the other things is, like, if you are down in the office, and I know some of you have been down there, you realize things come in the door all the time, and it's kind of an endless parade of the crisis du jour or this idea or that idea, and it's very easy to get distracted and to not get things done. And so having those goals is what I think you're asking for. So anyway, I was
understanding there are always going to be those things.
Yeah.
However,
yeah. So anyway, I was hoping that we might be able to set this work session, and the date I would love to see. I mean, we can pick a different date, but would be February 6th. And I'm wondering if there's any chance we could do it during the day, because we had a problem last time on Thursday. We picked a Thursday night that was a week before this meeting, and it just created a lot of strain and stress for staff to have to create the minutes from the last meeting, do this, planning commission. It's like too many things all together. So that date of the 6th would be ideal, because it would be 2 weeks ahead of the next council meeting. But we can't do it in the evening because the Parks Commission happens in here, unless we could somehow bump them, which I don't think we could do.
Meet in our
Green room? I don't know.
What do we call it?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, what do we call that thing? That is our.
I don't know if we can do it as a work session, because it has to be on
Recorded and stuff.
recorded.
Didn't we record it? It would have to be, well, I don't know. Why,
I wondered about that, because that would be another solution.
Daytimes are pretty hard for, I mean, not that we'd want to schedule it for me, because I won't show up anyway, right? No, I'll try. But it's exponentially harder for me the earlier it is in the day, because if I'm going to go to a meeting at any time in the day before 5 or 6, that means I won't be able to go to work that day.
Right.
So it's not just like leaving work early, or, it means I will forego
A whole
my
day. of work.
income for that day.
Okay. Well, what about the 5th? Do other people feel okay keeping it in the evening? It is sort of it's one of the more important meetings, I think, where we'll be thinking about what we want to direct staff to do. So that's just why I want to make sure we
Well, if that's,
don't have it.
Don't change it all because of maybe,
Well, but
because the staff is there going to, how many, will it just be you and Joseph at the meeting, or? Yeah.
I think so. This one will be us coming up with our priorities.
Right.
And as I said, you can send yours in too, or stop by and talk to Melissa or whatever, or me. We can talk about it ahead of time, and we could bring it. That will be the first step. Melissa will hopefully assemble. I don't know if you'll be able to assemble the staff priorities before that, but ideally we'll organize the council priorities. You'll organize the staff priorities, and then we'll kind of see what the mix is, and then we'll bring it back to everybody before we adopt the priorities finally. And the other thing that's good about adopting priorities is that then we all together say, yeah, I've got my own pet project, but I realize that council thinks this is a priority. So we're all going to be, kind of focused on those things, and understand that staff is going to focus on those things.
I just say, I feel like we have that roadmap, we have that goal, and that we use our skill set and our managers' best efforts to achieve the goals that have been established, because we're not going to come up with any new goals.
Well, it's not goals, it's priorities
Right.
for this year.
If you look at our facilities master plan or our strategic business plan, whatever it is we call it. There's goals that exist.
But the problem is there's too many goals in all of those. I don't know if you remember when I got onto council and I put all the list of all the water master plan and the sewer wastewater master plan, and I assembled them into a drawing to list all the things that we have to do. There's so many things that we have to do that we can't possibly do them all this year. So we have to pick what are the top 2 or 3 we're going to do of that list. So that's the guidance Melissa is looking for. So,
The 6th
Counselor,
is fine with me,
uh-huh.
and daytime is fine with me. And the 5th is fine with me.
It's fine.
I'm fine.
It's so good.
So we have 2 options, 6th during the daytime or 5th Joseph, do you know offhand, is the calendar of the 5th, would this room be open the evening of the 5th, if that's a Wednesday?
Most Wednesdays, we don't usually have meetings on Wednesdays. I will verify real quick.
Okay.
Would it be a daytime 3 o'clock or a daytime noon o'clock? What are you looking at?
I think we can make that decision.
3
Daytime
o'clock.
3 o'clock is fine.
Would that help you more?
Yeah, well, I mean, anything towards the end of the day allows me to some hope of production, some type. Yep, I'll do my best to be there, whatever you decide.
That is actually, I was noticing that the 5th is the night of the Curry Board of Commissioners meeting, and I noticed that they're going to try to come up here sometime. I don't know.
Are they coming up here?
They want to at some point, but anyway. Any other preferences for 6th or 5th from other council members? Can you guys all make either one?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Pogwizd.
That's 6th or 5th, whichever.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, Brett, your preference is the 5th in the evening.
I just want to, I will do my best, whatever the group decides best for the group, that I will do my best to be there.
So we could do the 5th at the same time as our normal meeting. Would everybody go with that?
Yes.
And then we'll make sure we'll give you the best chance to be here, Brett.
Sounds good.
And in general, since we're going to likely, not have work sessions all the time, but if we are going to have more work sessions, I kind of liked the idea of being able to have them on a Thursday, because it's always confusing to keep track of like, when is our meeting? And if we could, or even knowing ahead, like Thursday might be the time we're going to have a meeting, you could sort of keep it open.
What I discovered when the port had got so busy and when I was chairman there is that we ended up deciding to name them special meetings because you can do something,
Yep.
and otherwise it's kind of like, okay, nice chat.
Yeah. And you're going to be here anyway.
You get there, you forget what the heck so just for your consideration.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So we are going to have our priority session then on February 5th at 5:30 to 7:30. Speaking of which, we probably need an extension, but we're so close. Let's see. No, we're not. We need an extension. Okay. We're going to do that. We need may I entertain a motion to extend our meeting?
I'll move to extend the meeting.
Second? Anyone?
I'll second.
Okay, call for the vote. Councillor Brennan?
Yes.
Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Webb?
Webb, no.
Councillor Rask?
Yes.
Councillor Pogwizd?
Talks the most. And
Yes.
Okay. So as I was saying, we'll do it the 5th, and then I would like to request that counselors that you send in to Melissa your priorities, let's say by the 28th. And what I will do, and with Melissa, is pull out our priorities from last time, which was 2 years ago, the beginning of the last council, and share it with you, just so everybody can see what the last council's priorities were. And then that just kind of gets your thoughts going. And then we will, if you send them in, Melissa can organize them so we can see all of them ahead of time, and then people can be ready to talk about them.
What date was that you said by?
How about by the 28th?
Okay, thank you.
It's Tuesday, the 28th.
Tuesday, the 28th.
Okay, that's the deadline to get them in. That'll give us a week to get them organized. Although it'll be hard to get them out to everybody ahead of time, but we don't, for the work session, it's okay. We can just bring them and, yeah, okay. Okay, we're getting there. Okay, we are now on to we have here it looks like here there's the Planning Commission code update.
So that's what we had talked about. I believe that's what we had talked about, of them looking at that.
Oh, okay. Or is this for the, this is on here. I don't know. Is that related to that meeting in, I didn't remember this being on the agenda. Is that just an extra thing, that F?
I think we didn't know. I think we didn't know if
Okay.
it was going to be mine.
addressed that,
Yes,
yeah,
we already
Okay.
addressed it.
So, great.
Admin report.
We won't do that one. Okay, well then that brings us to citizen considerations.
That was the 5th, right? Is it
So,
3?
do we have anybody in the audience that would like to bring up a topic and speak during this citizen considerations? Do we have any citizens online who would like to speak during the citizen consideration portion of the agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will open it up for counselor considerations. Are there any counselors that have any reflections or thoughts they'd like to share at this time? Counselor Brennan, Counselor Burns?
I wanted to bring up that Main Street's working on a Winter Waters Festival to be held on March 1st and 2nd. It's going to be hopefully the beginning of a really big yearly or annual event.
Winter Waters, that's cool. That sounds cool. Thank you. Counselor Webb?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a little bit when we were speaking earlier about the understanding that public safety was not being funded through tax revenues, and that people don't perhaps understand that, but that was well understood. And our chief prior, Marvin Combs, had a force of 2.5 officers, and it doesn't work. You cannot have a 2.5 officer police department, and it just falls in on itself. And so that's when enforcement started, and the third officer would fund the fourth, and so if there's less understanding that I just want it. I just want everybody to know, eyes wide open, that we did know that was closely, scrutinized and calculated, and that's what we had to do. That was what Chief came to us, Hobart came to us and said, we can do this. Otherwise, we can't. So just move forward with the understanding that it wasn't a surprise, that the council at the time did know that it was dependent upon officer number 3 and officer number 4.
I guess the part that I was talking about is when we came up with the amount of the levy last time. I was under the impression that last levy would help us cover it adequately, and it turned out to be not enough to actually cover what we needed.
Copy.
So,
And things are so fluid and they change. And now with the road diet and such, I just wanted to, perhaps I misunderstood what you were
and that's a very important historical perspective, Counselor Webb, that I learned from you in the last session, to realize where have we come with our law enforcement and how it is helpful to have, that we have public safety at this time because of our force.
Yeah, right.
Because our levy does cover, it basically covers 2 officers. I think it's, my understanding was 2. So I think that's where
Which is nothing, which is Hank,
inadequate.
right?
Exactly.
Hank filling out a piece of paper, that's.
Correct. And that's why we have to, talk about with priorities and how do we make sure that we are doing the things that we need to do.
Totally appreciate all that. Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that perhaps I misunderstood.
Yep. Okay, online, Counselor Pogwizd, any comments, considerations?
No, thank you. Thank you for running a good meeting. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. And Counselor Rask?
I was just going to say congratulations. This has been a great meeting and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you both. It's much harder to be up here trying to think about how to keep moving things going forward while you're also trying to think about what's being said. It's sort of a new mental task, and I have new appreciation for Mayor Cox and former Mayor Cox, and hopefully I will learn to do it better as I go. But I appreciate all of your support, and of course I appreciate all of the counselors who put in their volunteer time on behalf of our community. And anyway, and so with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 7:46.
Are they,
Good job. That was
are they
good.
mayors? So is a mayor, mayor is mayor forever?